Hey everybody, so it's day 3 of me being snowed in, so I figured since I can't really go outside because my city doesn't have anything to handle snow, might as well just make another video, and I wanted to talk about mercenaries. The reason why is I'm part of a lot of Discord groups, and in one of those groups there was somebody that asked about when you should be using mercenaries. And everyone else's opinion is you use them at the beginning of the game only, and you only do it if you don't have enough manpower, and after that, they're a completely useless feature. Which is totally wrong, but also very inefficient because you're leaving a lot of power on the table. So I wanted to talk about this. Now, before I get into the actual mercenary aspect of it, you kind of have to understand how combat works in this game. So let's go ahead and pivot into how the actual math works when it comes to combat. And don't worry, I'm not about to break out the Excel sheets. Instead, we're going to talk about this equation. And the reason we're talking about just this equation is because the other one that this gets plugged into includes things that are completely irrelevant to mercenaries, specifically pips. Those are terrain pips, unit pips, general pips, and roll of the dice. These things, it doesn't matter if it's mercenary or not, it's all the same. But in this equation, there is actually a difference between mercenary and non-mercenary. So let's go through the actual variables here. First one is strength. Strength just means how many units are in the regiment, because it's by regiment individually that's being calculated. In this case, there's 1,000 men in this unit, so the strength would be 1,000, so it's 1/1. Now, the more units you lose, the less men there are to pull the trigger, so there's less damage they can deal because they can't pull the trigger. Simple enough. The next one in here is damage. Damage is generally from your tech. As you can see here, I'm getting a little bit more infantry fire damage if I can get to the next tech level, but you can see what your damages are right here. And when I say mostly, it's because there are actually a few modifiers in here that'll increase the damage. For example, you have in here artillery fire. That adds +1 to the fire coming out of Spain's artillery. That is why their cannons early on are more dangerous, but it's also why their ships are, because the cannon fire is also on their ships. That's 1. 2, you have things like the Commonwealth, who have winged hussars, who do increased shock damage with their cavalry. So that goes into that part of the equation. The next one is tactics. Tactics is right here, and it's based mainly on tech as well. You get certain increases in military tactics whenever you tech up. However, discipline does modify it. And then, of course, we have combat ability and discipline, and those we need to talk about separately. So, combat ability and discipline, both of these will increase the amount of damage that you are dealing. And as you can see here, you have the infantry combat ability, cavalry, artillery right here along the edge. It's simply adding 40% more damage from my infantry than I would otherwise receive, and 20% more cannon. Now, discipline's doing the exact same thing. The higher discipline I have, the more damage I'm doing. The key to understanding this equation, though, is that tactics is the enemy's tactics. You take the other side, the person you're attacking's tactics, and that will increase or decrease the amount of damage you're doing, because a higher number on the bottom means it's going to be smaller. So you want to have your military tactics as high as possible, which is improved with discipline, so you will take less damage from the enemy, but the higher discipline you have, you're also doing more damage to the enemy. So you want to have as much discipline as you possibly can. So how does this have anything to do with mercenaries? You see, mercenaries have their own discipline. And if you come in here, and just from the fact that I have mercenary ideas completed, I get 5% there. And then if I have infrastructure in mercenary, I also get an additional 5% here. And that might not sound that great. I mean, I only have 10% mercenary discipline, whereas I have 130% normally. Well, the thing is that if you actually look at this combat right here, and you just hover over, it tells you, you stack them. So by having my infantry be mercenary units, they're taking less damage and dealing more damage than my normal infantry would. So having mercenary companies is a great thing to have because they'll be better suited for combat than your normal units. In addition, the fact that they're mainly infantry benefits you. The reason why is they tend to have a higher cost. So what? Ducats are ducats. but you're going to be paying a lot more for cannon, and realistically, the extra discipline on the cannon isn't doing substantially that much. But having those infantry able to be there to take a lot less damage means you're doing substantially more damage to your enemy. So using your mercenary infantry as stormtroopers, as shock troopers, and putting them in first before you feed in reinforcements will make it so you're able to punch above your weight class. Meaning your normal troops should be cannons because they're a little bit cheaper that way. And then on top of that, you can bring in reinforcement infantry and let the mercenaries take most of the damage, saving your manpower, but also being able to do more damage to the enemy and taking less themselves. And that's not the only thing you should keep in mind. What's up, everybody? So it's time to give away another CD key, and this one is for Lords and Villains. If you want a copy of this game, just leave a comment down below that somewhere in the comment includes the word Villain somewhere in there. And at the end of the week, I'll go through all the comments, and any that actually do so, I'll pick one of your comments at random. I'll then reply to your comment with the CD key for the game that you enter into Steam, and the game is yours. Now, obviously, since anybody can read my replies, make sure you turn on your notifications, because if anybody else sees the CD key first and enters it into their Steam, it's now their game. So, with that being said, let's get back to the guide. The main benefit of using mercenary discipline like this is pretty much only going to be seen in multiplayer games. And the reason why is because there's no easy way to tell what your discipline is. As I showed you before, clicking on this, it doesn't easily show you what your mercenary discipline is. It doesn't tell you whether or not you're getting mercenary discipline. It doesn't tell you if they're mercenaries. If you hover over here, it doesn't say, oh yeah, they also get this on their mercenaries. At all. And if you hover over the wrong unit, it also doesn't tell you that. This is a cannon. And because it's a cannon and not my mercenaries cannon, it's my own, it doesn't tell anything about mercenary discipline. You actually have to hover over a mercenary unit in particular during the game playing normally. And with units moving in and out, you might not catch it. And while it's only 10% because I have mercenary ideas that are finished, and then I picked up infrastructure as well to give myself 5% more on top of that, it is something that is unexpected and can be very dangerous. And if you're playing the right kind of countries, such as the Swiss, who have their own government reforms similar to that of the Prussians, where they can bump it up and they get bonus mercenary discipline up to 10% from that, as well as, if I recall correctly, their ideas have mercenary discipline in them, you're able to be very, very dangerous because you're running around with an extra 25% discipline with your mercenaries that people can't easily tell. Now, Swiss, you can kind of understand they're probably going to have good mercenaries, but there's a few other countries like Aragon that, if I recall correctly, also have mercenary discipline. And if you think, well, I'll just use the ledger, there's nothing in the ledger, even if it is available to you, that will tell you, oh yeah, they also have this other 20% discipline that if they hire a mercenary company, they can throw at you, and you will not see it coming at all. So it is something that you can use to surprise enemies and make it so a battle that they would think, oh no, we're even, this should be fine. They're not fine. And if you do it correctly, you have these units that are going to be, yes, more expensive, but absolutely useful. And if you can come in here and find ones that have their own unique things in here, like this unit right here has another 5% discipline. So I'll have an extra 15% on to my 130. So I have 145% discipline running around with those units. So this is why you should be using mercenaries into the late game. You should be using them as the first unit to walk in, and using normal units for cannons, for support. Not for the guys in front, because they're the ones getting shot. Let them be the mercenaries. They're better at it than your normal units. The last thing I really want to talk about when it comes to mercenaries, which is both a bit of a warning for people, but also it's kind of a tactic you can use in certain situations, especially if you're outside of Europe, is your mercenary units are going to be based on the tech of their home base, not yours. So if you pull up the mercenary unit list, you'll notice that some of them have a blue province. This is where they are from. This is their home base. So in the Prussian Volunteer Army, the tech level of them is going to be based on who owns Königsberg. Since it's Prussia, it'll be based off of Prussia's tech level. Now, on the other hand, the Gascon Musket Company, they're based out of Armagnac in France, which means France at tech level 26 is going to dictate the level of the Gascon Musket Company. But if you scroll down here, the Sahel Company, they're hired out of Timbuktu. And Timbuktu, as you can see here, is tech level 19. So if you simply scroll through here and find them, it'll tell you in this little description box that they'll be at tech level 19 with military tactics of 2.25 and all these damage numbers. But if you go to Wilno, with the Lithuanian company, they're tech level 24. The reason why, the Commonwealth, who owns the province, is tech level 24. And then the Gascon Musket Company is 26, because France is level 26, and then Prussia is tech level 32, because I'm not in Iron Man mode, and I just wanted to show you the differences here. So you're able to hire out of their country and use their advanced tech against them. But if you hire, say, in this case, I'm Prussia, I don't want to hire French mercenaries. They're going to be weaker than mine. So I would rather hire mine. But if I'm, say, Timbuktu, and I'm fighting a Portugal pushing into my lands, it might be worth it to give up that province, not because I want to, but because that way it'll make this mercenary company their tech level so I can hire them and expand elsewhere using their advanced tech, or at least to hire them for the next war so I have their tech level in my, at least, mercenary company, and then I can use reinforcements for my own tech level to at least keep the morale up and then replace the units as they die. So there is some strategy to using these mercenaries in this way, simply because by doing so, you're able to reach tech parity with somebody. But if you're advanced compared to them, you need to be careful and make sure you're not hiring garbage. Because, sure, it might be at their tech level, but it's probably going to be better suited for you just to use normal units at that point. So there is a lot more depth to mercenary usage other than use them within the first 20 years, use them when you're out of manpower, don't ever use them other than that. Because they can be shock troops, they can be like a fifth column bringing tech into your country that you wouldn't otherwise have, and allowing you to punch well above your weight, or at least be able to take them down with you. Because somehow mercenaries are harder to shoot, I guess. But either way, that covers everything I needed to talk about mercenaries. It's just, I think some people use them in a very narrow way, and you're going to likely be able to get much better results understanding how this works. Though granted, it's mainly going to be useful for countries like Aragon, Switzerland, and whoever else has increased mercenary discipline with substantially reduced costs. But with that being said, I'm going to be continuing to make nation guides as well as mechanic guides like this. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm definitely staying around, so I'll be making more content. But have a great week, everybody.